"Watch out, there is a crack in the ceiling of the plane." The boy just wanted to tell the flight attendant about this discovery, but it was too late. The passengers on the plane immediately froze in fear. With the plane shaking violently, the hole quickly expanded. Powerful air pressure instantly sucked backpacks and items sucked out of the cabin. The ceiling of the plane was lifted off. Flight attendants who were not wearing seat belts, they had to hold on to their seats for dear life. The falling luggage seriously injured the passengers. The cabin was filled with tears. In an instant, the plane was transformed into an open-top aircraft. The flight altitude was 7,800 meters. The thin air and the low temperature of nearly 50 degrees below 0 Celsius. It only takes a few minutes to freeze a person into a popsicle. The captain immediately put on the oxygen mask. Seeing the situation behind him, instructed the co-pilot to drop altitude immediately. At this moment, the ceiling of the plane is broken. Only a thin floor was connecting the nose and tail of the plane. The plane could break up at any time. The captain could only use the arc trajectory to descend the altitude. At the same time, he put up the 7700 emergency code. Ground air traffic controllers received the distress signal, immediately contacted the crew, but the cockpit airflow was too loud. Air traffic controller could not hear. The situation became very critical. At this time, passengers found that the oxygen mask did not work at all. The oxygen system had long disappeared. Many people began to suffer from hypoxia. The captain also began to lose consciousness. Thoughts of when he was in the Air Force. The instructor told him that if there was an accident in the air, you must always keep your eyes on the instrument panel in front of you. The only person who can save you is yourself. The captain woke up with a start. He flew the plane down to aerobic altitude, but then he found that the left engine of the plane was dead. A 748 airliner suddenly disintegrated in the air, turned into a convertible. More than 200 passengers' lives were in danger. The captain brought the plane down to the right altitude, but suddenly found that the left engine was dead. The captain guessed that the engine had probably inhaled debris. The co-pilot immediately took out the fault manual, repeatedly tried to restart the engine according to the instructions, but there was no response. The flight attendant in the passenger cabin saw her colleague on the ground. She struggled to get up. She crawled forward against the strong airflow. The surrounding passengers also helped. After making sure her colleague's life was not in danger, she stood up again, told everyone to put on their life jackets. 3 minutes after the plane was torn apart, the co-pilot finally made contact with the tower. Air traffic controller let them land at the nearest Maui's Kahului Airport, where the runway was cleared for them, and rescue teams were notified to be ready. However, this airport was not the best place to land because it's located on a small island, and there are often strong winds blowing across the island. If the plane encounters strong winds during landing, the consequences would be unthinkable. To avoid the strong convective air at high altitude, the captain again lowered the plane to an altitude and then asked the co-pilot to release the flaps. He wanted to conduct a simulated landing beforehand. However, when the plane dropped to airspeed, the whole plane began to shake violently and became difficult to control. At this point, the co-pilot remembered what happened to him when he was flying a small plane. In strong windy weather, it was impossible to make a slow descent. They had to try a high-speed landing, just as everyone was getting ready to fly to Maui Airport, but a 3,000-meter mountain blocked the way. One of the planes disintegrated in the air. To ensure air pressure, they had to choose to fly low. However, a mountain blocked the way. The cabin was filled with wailing. The shadow of death loomed over the whole plane. Luckily, the captain was experienced in flying. During the turn, he lowered the speed of the plane. Finally, the plane was able to go around the mountain without any danger. But just then a new problem appeared. The captain asked the co-pilot to lower the landing gear, but the front landing gear light did not light up. If the landing gear had not been lowered, the plane would have disintegrated on landing. This would have caused an even worse disaster. The co-pilot immediately used manual control, but to no avail. The co-pilot rushed to the tower to explain the situation. Air traffic controller tried to get firefighters to spray some foam on the runway, but it was too late. By now the plane was already over the airport. Air traffic control used binoculars to observe. They then found that the roof of the plane had disappeared, but fortunately, the plane's front landing gear had been lowered. But the captain did not let down his guard because the landing gear is probably not locked. The flight attendant in the cabin was still trying to calm everyone down. He stood up in spite of the danger, seeing the airport right in front of him, immediately told everyone to huddle up with their hands on their heads. Prepare for impact. Everything was ready. The captain flew the plane to land. After a few frightening minutes, the open-topped plane finally landed safely on the runway. Everyone breathed a sigh of relief. The air traffic controllers also hugged each other with excitement. Then a rescue truck arrived. All the nearly 200 passengers on board landed safely. The only regret was that one flight attendant was sucked out of the cabin. The body was never found. This film is based on Aloha Airlines Flight number 243, a real-life incident. After the investigation, this 748 passenger plane had been in service for 19 years. It had flown 89,090 times, exceeded the 75,000 flight limit. The cause of the cabin breakage, the adhesives connecting the aluminum panels were severely deteriorated. The rivets could not support it. The pressure was so great that the ceiling eventually flew off the plane. In an interview afterwards, a passenger said before boarding the plane had found some cracks in the fuselage, but did not tell anyone. After this incident, major U.S. airlines have eliminated those old airliners to prevent such accidents from happening again. Finally, I wish you all a safe arrival on every trip.